The next thing you're going to need is some strips to support the shelves on the framework. You don't need anything fancy. Anything that's around about 3/4 of an inch to an inch square would do the job. They're just going to be simply screwed on here to support the shelves. I've just had a root about in my scrap wood box and found some bits and pieces that will do for the support, so I just run these through the machine. I've cut all the rails out now. The offcuts off the end, I've kept those because what I'm going to do, I'm going to use those on the strips along the back to support the back of the shelf in the middle. You only need short ones in the centre, so don't throw them away. They'll be ideal for that. You've got to then think about the placement of the shelf supports. Things to take into account is you're going to put these rails along the back to hold the two sides together. So you want to make sure when you screw this shelf support on that you don't go back too far, otherwise you won't be able to get that in the right place, because it's better to have it roughly opposite the support here so you can screw these back shelf supports in the middle there. So a good way of doing that, well, there's two ways really, well several ways. Get a strip of wood the same width as the back supports like this, put a couple of nails in it and just simply tack it on gently like so. That then represents the back. Then you can just butt your strips up against it or make sure they don't go too far back. If you do it this way and screw them on like that, the fronts will be exactly the same, so that when they're screwed on, the actual shelf will fit neatly over like that. This is the underneath obviously, and that's the top, and so this just overlaps the front. When you're positioning the shelf supports, it's a good idea not to place them in the middle, but place them near the bottom end of the side rail. The reason being that when you put your shelf on, assuming this is the top, like so, it will leave a little bit of the side support here, which does help prevent things rolling off the side of the unit, like tins and things would go through this gap. So that will sort of act as a little stopper, stops things sliding off. So it's worth taking that into account. It's a good idea to use a square just to make sure you get them at right angles. I've got the one side completed with the shelf supports on. Now get the other side, make sure you get it the right way up, otherwise it will look a bit odd because you've got a bottom and a top, and simply lay the other side alongside the one you've done, and that will allow you to mark where the shelf supports go so you get them all in the right position. If you do it at the front, and it's much better than if you do it the other way around, because if they're accurate at the front, nobody will notice any difference if it's not quite square at the back. Almost finished now. The only thing really left to do now is to drill 2 holes along the back of the side rails to accommodate, so you can screw these back rails on that holds the whole thing together. You need to do 2 holes adjacent to each one of these supports where this is going to go. It's not essential, but before we put the back rails on, it's possibly a good idea just to run the plane over the edges to take the sharp edge off. When you come to assemble the unit, it's probably easier if you can put one side in the vise and do it upright like I'm doing it here. You can do it on the bench, but it is a bit fiddly. This is usually the easiest way to get it lined up properly. Just take a couple of the shelves. I've got one side in the vise and the other side just freestanding at the moment. Take one of the shelves and pop it on near the top, say the second shelf from the top, just push it together roughly. Put another shelf down on the bottom as well to keep it parallel. Then take one of the back rails you've already prepared and put it on the top. It's a bit fiddly, but you can do it. It's easier standing up. Just put one screw in the bottom. Make sure you get it in line with the other bar, the cross member. You don't need to put the screw right in for now, just screw it in a little bit to hold it. That's the top rail in. Now it's just a process of going down, putting the other 4 back rails in. Once you've got a couple in to hold it together, you can just lay it on the bench and do it if it's easier, but just put the other screws in. Well, it's nearly finished now. There's just a couple of more simple little jobs to do to make it better. One is to stop the shelf from buckling at the back, because I didn't put any support wood on the back. There's no need really. I'm going to fit these little blocks that I cut out earlier off the offcuts, and they just simply fit underneath the back of the shelf there and support it. So all you need to do is pop the shelf on, just get a pencil and draw a pencil underneath the shelf. Then when you take the shelf off, you've got the marking of where the shelf is going to be underneath, and it's just a simple matter of screwing that in position there just as support for the centre of the shelf. The other thing worth doing to make it safer and sturdier, to stop the shelf from shifting, is to simply drill a small hole in the front rail here adjacent to the shelf, so you don't go too deep, and then simply pop a screw in there. It'll go into the chipboard, so it's not going to be very secure, but it will hold the shelf in place and it will make the unit sturdier. You don't have to do it to all the shelves, perhaps the top one, the bottom one maybe. The reason for that is, not only does that make it sturdy and safer, it also holds the front of the thing together, because otherwise you've got a rail on the back but not on the front, so it will tend to open out at the front. So if you put a screw in each of the shelves at the front only, you don't need them in the back, just on each side, that will hold the two sides together and it will look neater, it will feel stronger and it will be safer. If you really want to make a firm job of it, just make yourself a few of these little right angled corner brackets from some scraps of wood and just screw a couple, one in this side and one in the other side in the top corner, and that will make the whole thing really rigid. But you don't really need it for this purpose. It's not very elegant, but it will do the job that's required to do. It's made entirely from recycled materials, like old kitchen units and bits and pieces from other jobs. The only cost really is a few wood screws, and the rest of it is just my time. It did take me quite a long time, not because it would normally take a lot of time, but because I've had to film each bit, and it does take time trying to explain things. If you took a bit more time in making this and finished the wood properly, like planing it on all four sides rather than leaving it rough sawn as I've done, it wouldn't make a half bad shelving unit. You'd need to make the shelves from similar material rather than the mixture that I've used. You could actually use in the house. You could embellish it a little bit and polish it up and perhaps paint it. I reckon it'd be okay for household use. This one's going in the shed though. Well, that's all for now, folks. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.